Namaskar and welcome to this special program in the memory of Shri K.R. Malkani. Perhaps one of the youngest and longest serving editor in media industry who took over as the reins of organizer as editor in 1948 and with many remarkable achievements uh, uh, continued to work till 1982. Kevalram Ratanmal Malkani. Many of the young people who have joined us through Facebook and other social media platforms, uh, they may not be familiar with this name. He perhaps was the pioneer as far as the idea of free press is concerned. Because uh, somewhere in 1948-49, even before the Indian Constitution came into existence, under K.R. Malkaniji's leadership, organizer picked up the issue of plight of Hindus in the then East and West Pakistan and continued to write about a coherent refugee policy in India. And the attack on the then government was so fierce that Nehru government imposed censorship on organizer. K.R. Malkaniji fought that battle in the court of law and won the case. And in a way, that case became a kind of foundation for the entire discourse of free speech in independent India. The concept of reasonable restrictions was also introduced after this particular case. Thereafter, if you see whether it was the Praja Parishad Andolan in Jammu Kashmir, 1962 war with China, Pakistan war of 1965, and the untimely demise of then India's Prime Minister Lal Bahadur Shastri, whom Malkaniji had a very lengthy discussion on the Pakistan issue. At every juncture, Malkaniji, as the editor and organizer as a weekly magazine, played an important role in shaping the national discourse. Between 1971 to 1975, the experiment of Delhi called the Motherland perhaps was the most important contribution made by Malkaniji, because with a nationalist thought, having a daily newspaper was a kind of dream come true. He was simultaneously editing both a daily and a weekly. And through the Motherland, he perhaps made the first prediction about the possibility of imposition of emergency in India. Again, when the emergency was imposed, it was Malkaniji who was arrested immediately on the same night and grilled for his prediction on emergency. Unfortunately, for next 2 years, it was very difficult to sustain the publication, and therefore, because Malkaniji was in jail, the entire company was sealed by the Indira Gandhi government. In 1977, uh, uh, unfortunately, uh, Organizer was revived, but Motherland could not be revived. Till 1982-83, Malkaniji continued to serve Organizer. In between, he played certain important roles. He was a Nieman Fellow at Harvard University in 1961-62. Then he was a pioneer in starting Indo-Tibetan Friendship Forum, which played an important role in shaping the discourse related to Tibet. He was also the General Secretary of Editors Guild of India during 1978 and 79. Later, 1990 onwards, he entered into active politics, though he was associated with Janasangh for a long time. He was never there actively in politics. He chose to have an ideological position, but at the same time played a journalistic role. As Vice President of Bharatiya Janata Party from 1991 to 1994, then member of Rajya Sabha from 1994 to 2000, and then Lieutenant Governor of Pondicherry from July 2002 till his death in October 2003. The Midnight Knock, the RSS story, the Sindh story, Ayodhya and Hindu-Muslim relations, these are some of his well-received books. But in recent times, perhaps one of the most important book that came into discussion after a movie on Lal Bahadur Shastri's death called Tashkent Files, The Political Mysteries. Again, very important contribution about the post-independent political mysteries that Malkaniji talked about. A visionary, a committed ideologue, and still an objective editor. And therefore, while remembering him, we thought that in collaboration with institutions like Indian Institute of Mass Communication, Organizer and Panchajanya should organize something which will connect Shri K.R. Malkani with the present generation. Today, perhaps the most debated and discussed issue in media is the concept of nation and nationalism, whether journalism can go hand in hand with nationalism. And therefore, we thought, let us discuss this, because perhaps the first person to practice the nationalistic thought and still played a role as a journalist, as an editor. So, whether this is possible, how far this is possible, what can we learn from Mr. K.R. Malkaniji's legacy? While starting his birth centenary celebration, we thought, let us discuss and debate, because Malkaniji was the man of ideas, the man of executing new ideas. He was the one who convinced Pandit Deen Dayal Upadhyay to write a column called Political Diary in Organizer. He was the one to convince Sri Lalkrishna Advani to write a column on films in Organizer. So, To commemorate the centenary of such a great personality, we thought let us discuss an idea whether journalism and nationalism can go hand in hand. And to discuss and open this discussion, we have decided to call Sri Kanchan Gupta, an eminent journalist who started his career from the Telegraph, and then the statesman, pioneer. Then he was very closely associated with the Niti Central also. In between, he had very important stint at the Prime Minister's office during Atal Bihari Vajpayee government. And presently, he is a senior advisor at the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. Kanchanda is known for his free and frank opinion, like Malkani-ji, and at the same time, taking a nationalistic stand on various issues. And therefore, for deliberate on this issue, I invite Sri Kanchan Gupta to deliver a special talk in the memory of K.R. Malkani-ji, Journalism and Nationalism, Complementary or Contradictory, Revisiting K.R. Malkani's Legacy. Over to you, Kanchanda.
Thank you, Prafulji. It's an honor to be invited to this platform, and more importantly, it's an honor to be invited to talk about somebody whom I came to hugely admire, and I have very fond memories of him. It's I still remember it was, I think, sometime in I relocated to Delhi in 1991, and I think either in the winter of 1991 or early 1992, I had gone to the BJP central office at 11 Ashoka Road. I mean, at that time it was just a bungalow turned into an office. And what struck me was I had gone to meet Advani ji. And what struck me was that Mr. Malkani had a bigger office than Mr. Advani. And later, because this is something which I found very strange. I mean, in terms of seniority, in terms of necessity, Advani ji definitely, or the party president definitely needed a bigger office. Yet Malkani ji's office was the biggest biggest of the rooms at 11 Ashoka Road. And later, I found out why. Advani ji and other seniors of the party not only had a huge amount of respect for Malkani ji, and although he was not an active politician in the sense that he would not go around campaigning or whatever, but he was a one-man think tank. I mean, he was the go-to person for any strategic thinking, any tactical thinking, and he was amazingly well read. All he did was to sit and read and write and read and write. And every day at 3 o'clock, his office at 11 Ashoka Road would turn into some sort of a coffee house. And some of the brightest minds of Delhi and some of the brightest minds visiting Delhi would be present over there discussing things far removed from politics or very intensely discussing politics. And somehow I sensed that those discussions, while they also enriched callow journalists like me who were still very young, still very raw, but it also enriched the party because there were new ideas, there were new thoughts, etc., etc. Subsequently, I came to know him at a deeply personal level, and we would often spend time together. One of the things which he explained to me was the difference between the Indian nation state and the European Westphalian nation state. Now, before I get into that, since Prafulji mentioned that he was one of the early recipients of the Neiman's Fellowship at Harvard, and this was at a time when very few Indians got that kind of honor. Malkani ji was miserable. He was miserable at Harvard. He was miserable culturally. He was miserable socially. He was miserable politically. And he said that every day was a torture for me, that I had to stay back for one more day. So I asked him, but why? And he said, he would make this sound, clucking sound. And he said, the whole thing is, it's not my country. अब जो मेरा देश नहीं है, मैं वहां पर पड़ा रहूं, इतने दिनों वहां पर रहूं, वो अजीब से लोग हैं, अजीब भाषा में बात करते हैं, अजीब खाना खाते हैं, हर रोज नहाते नहीं है. He had some very strange quirks and they would come out. But coming back to this whole thing of differentiating the Indian nation state from the Westphalian European nation state. And it's very important because often these finer nuances get lost in sharp exchanges that are really meaningless. So the European landmass evolved nation states within the European landmass. They evolved over a period of time. And Westphalia sort of created bordered zones, which then became the early nation states of Europe. Of course, that did not hold too long. We know what happened during the First World War, the Second World War. And even after that, after the fall of the Berlin Wall and the end of the Soviet Empire, many of the East European states underwent Balkanization. But that only underscores the fragility of the concept of a Westphalian state in Europe. So a nation state was created, and then nationalism was retrofitted to that nation state because that nationalism gave the nation state a sense of being, a sense of identity, etc. But the European Westphalian state based nationalism was extremely narrow, and it was by nature exclusionary. It was both exclusive and exclusionary. On the other hand, the Indian nation state, as we have it now, the Republic of India, is sort of, it is a derivative of the Indian civilizational nation. So, this distinction that we did not have to discover, we did not have to create a nation to further generate the idea of nationhood, and from nationhood to derive the idea of nationality and nationalism. It was all there. The Indian civilizational nation has been in existence for millennia. We can quibble about the number 5,000, 6,000, whatever, but it has been there. And what we have, as I said, is a derivative of that civilizational nation. So, therefore, our nationalism, our sense of national identity, our sense of national pride, our sense of who we are, because everything ultimately boils down to who we are. So an Italian says that I am an Italian. We say I am an Indian. There is a fundamental difference between an Italian's concept of his Italian identity and an Indian's concept of his Indian identity. And that difference is basically civilizational. And therefore, when I talk of Indian nationalism, I must keep in mind that my nationalism is not exclusionary. It is not an exclusivist nationalism. It is, by definition, an inclusivist nationalism. I am a Bengali, but my national identity subsumes that Bengaliness of me and makes me at par with a Maharashtrian or a Bihari or a Jharkhandi or a Naga. Because my nationalism is inclusive and it includes and it weaves. And it is this explanation so many years ago which sort of triggered in me to revisit, not that I knew a lot, not that I know a lot even today, but to revisit and re-explore this whole idea of who are we, our nation, our national identity, and our nationalism. And it has been a wonderful journey in the sense that one learns a lot. One learns to embrace new ideas, and also one learns to discard some things which you thought were overwhelmingly true. Now, I will give you one small example. Every time there is talk of nationalism, the counter to that is that, oh, Tagore disparaged nationalism. He had a very low opinion of nationalism. He said this about nationalism, and his essay on nationalism is quoted ad nauseum. Now, Tagore was a genius. He was a multifaceted genius. He was way ahead of his times. But Tagore was not a perfect man. No genius is perfect. He had his own views. He held those views very dear. But I don't think in his lifetime he would uh, excoriate anybody for challenging his views. There is no record of that. Two, Tagore's essay on nationalism is entirely based on the European experience and Europe going to war during the First World War and battling out national identities, very narrowly defined national identities. And Tagore found it appalling. And hence his denunciation of nationalism. But if you anybody who reads that essay will know that that essay has been written in the perspective of the First World War. It comes after the First World War. It comes between the interregnum, during the interregnum of the First World War and the Second World War, when Europe was grappling with identity issues, and it had little to do with India. So it is important to understand this so that you can respond accordingly. Now, why am I getting into this detail? Because the idea of India or the concept of India, I personally don't like this phrase idea of India, because India is much beyond an idea. India is a reality. India has been a reality. Bharat Varsha has been a reality. The Indian civilizational state has been a reality. And the Republic of India is a reality. These realities are inelastic realities. They are not going to change. So the idea of India is a very, I mean, it makes no sense. But the concept of India as a civilizational nation, from that flows the concept of mother, or rather the concept of motherland, and the concept of your nation as Shakti, as mother, and as the endowment of all that is good And because we conceive that wholeness in our mothers, we refer to our nation as our motherland. Very few countries in the world would refer, or people in very few countries in the world would refer to their country as their motherland. They would say homeland. They would say my country. Uh, they would say fatherland. And I think the uh, only time India has been described as a fatherland is by Savarkar when he refers to Bharat as Punya Bhumi and Pitra Bhumi. But otherwise, uniformly, whatever the political views, extremists, centrists, right wing, left wing, the nation as mother has been the universal view. And this again, if you read the full text of Janagana Mana, you will see that Tagore refers to the supreme being both as masculine and feminine. When it comes to seeking protection, or rather, when it comes to seeking care, affection, love, he switches over to the feminine form, that like a mother. And of course, in Bankim's uh, Vande Mataram, it is an ode to the motherland. And the motherland is not just territory or land or geography. It ultimately becomes the temple of the highest temple of worship. Now, this sense of feeling an attachment, an umbilical attachment, that is what what is the core of nationalism in the Indian context. And very few Western scholars would be able to understand or appreciate why we feel that way. For us, our relationship with our mothers is not through a, a greetings card on Mother's Day. Even our big stars, celebrities, they don't go on stage and say, "Hi, mom, miss you, mom." So that intensity of relationship gets translated into the intensity of the bonding between the nation and the individual. And why am I getting into this? Because this is how Malkani ji would view the essence of nationalism. And this again becomes the foundation for an ethical existence, for a virtuous existence. When I say ethical and virtuous, I don't mean that you become ascetic. No. There was nothing ascetic about Malkani ji. He led a very simple middle class life, but he was not an ascetic. But he was ethical. Prafulji referred to the censorship that was imposed, or the censorship which organizer had to face. If you go through the debates on India's First Amendment, I often point this out, that the world's oldest democracy and the world's largest democracy share one constitutional commonality. The First Amendment in America makes free speech absolute. It makes free speech non-negotiable. But in India, the world's largest democracy, the First Amendment made free speech negotiable. It imposed curbs on free speech, and it possibly laid the foundation for the subsequent suspension of fundamental rights during the emergency and other curbs on freedom and liberty that other governments have often been involved with, whether it is Rajiv Gandhi's postal bill or whatever. That instance, I don't know how many are aware, but that instance of conflict between Nehru and organizer, it's very interesting. Actually, if there are IIMC students here, they should read up on it, and their teachers should also use it as a case study. Now, why did it happen? It essentially happened because the organizer had taken up, this was in 1950, an organizer, I think, was just 2 years old. Prafulji, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, I think it was 2 years old. And he had very actively taken up the continuous inflow of Bengali Hindu refugees from East Pakistan. You see, unlike the partition in the West, that is Punjab, partition in the East was a continuous affair, and in fact, it is still continuing. In the West, it was like a single blow. Countries partition, people go across, people come over, and it's over and done with. But in the East, it was till 1971, it was a continuously bleeding sore wound. And after 1971, it has become a festering wound. And Malkani ji, as editor of Organizer, had taken up in 1950 the issue of Bengali Hindus, their suffering in East Pakistan, that the fact that despite the Nehru Liaquat Pact, they were continuing to come into India. Why was this happening, etc., etc. And curiously, the other issue I am told which he took up was the extrajudicial killing or extrajudicial killings of communists in Kerala. And sorry, not in Kerala, but what was the Madras presidency at that time. Nehru did not like this contrarian view coming out, and that too in a pesky paper like Organizer. So he got into a tangle, and the government of the day got into a tangle with organizer. And then Malkani ji he wrote in the organizer that to threaten the liberty of the press for the sole offense of non-conformity to official view may be a handy tool for tyrants, but is only a crippling curtailment of civil liberties in a free democracy. A government can always learn more from bona fide criticism of independent thinking citizens than the fulsome flattery of charlatans. This again sort of reflects the attitude of Malkani ji towards his journalism, towards his life, and towards the party when he became actively associated with it. I do understand and I do know that he was attached with the Bharatiya Janasangh, but he was never a prominent voice in it. Those days, he was more into organizer. First, he first couple of years of his life, he worked as a lecturer, and then he joined Hindustan Times. From Hindustan Times, he uh, took charge as editor of organizer, and I think he also held the editorship of Panchjanya. And interestingly, around the same time, Atal Bihari Vajpayee was editor of a Hindi paper called Veer Arjun. Uh, Malkani ji was told there is this young lad who needs to be uh, supported in Delhi, and his name is L.K. Advani. So that is how Advani ji, on arrival in Delhi, lands up at the organizer's office. And as Prafulji mentioned, he used to write on films. And that is how films became a lifelong passion for Advani ji. The around 71, I think, or 70, 71, Motherland came into being. Malkani ji became editor of Motherland. Motherland was an activist paper, what we would call the wire, or not wire really, but it was an activist paper. It was an activist paper which had very strong editorial views, entrenched editorial views. It was politically aligned against the Congress and definitely against Indira Gandhi. It was pro free market in its own way and against socialist India. So it used to very actively push its own line. And there were other similar papers. I think Himmat was one, and Vigil was another. But those were smaller papers, and they never came into the sort of prominence that Motherland came into. And all the while, Malkani ji kept his three personas alive. So there was one Malkani ji who was, and he was ideologically sort of cast in iron, carved in stone. There was a second Malkani ji who was very mindful of keeping his publication going, that the publication should not shut down for want of resources or want of whatever. And he did two things for that. He gathered around him young talent who with whom he had some sort of a with whom he shared a certain uh, uh, comfort level, and B, he and Advani ji ensured that financial resources, whatever they could mobilize, kept on happening. Malkani ji and both Advani ji and Malkani ji have told me delightful stories that they would go around. I now forget who had the scooter, whether Malkani ji had the scooter or Advani ji had the scooter. But they would go around Delhi meeting people, trying to mobilize funds, etc. And the third persona which was there was that of someone who instinctively rejected anything that violated the basic premise of democracy. Now, again, he did not see democracy in as a as the Western utopia or as the utopia that has been packaged and sold around the world by the West. He saw democracy as part of our civilizational heritage, where even the king was not supreme. And that sort of kept on bringing out some of the most scintillating thoughts from Malkani ji. His books are there, then he wrote. He was a very prolific writer and he was very well liked, even by newspapers which did not agree with the BJP, which did not agree with Malkaniji's thoughts, but they would definitely publish whatever he sent them. And that is because there was a certain integrity, there was a certain intellectual integrity in him. And that intellectual integrity came from a sense of very uh, a very firmly held uh, firmly held, firmly believed in, and sort of worshipped form of nationalism that India, no matter what happens, no matter who comes to power, no matter who does what, but end of the day, what matters is India. And that the daily race of government, of politics, of bureaucracy, all that is relevance. What has to be ensured that tomorrow morning we must wake up with the conviction that India has slightly changed or India has become slightly better or that India has become more stronger than what it was yesterday. And I'm just reducing it to basics, but his was a more nuanced view. But that is the way he saw it. And in a sense, that is the way Many others of his generation saw the world, they saw the country, and they saw their profession. Girilal Jain is another example. He saw, for him, it was the same spirit of nationalism which drove his journalism, and he rose to become the editor of Times of India. So, when we ask ourselves this question, that can you be a nationalist and a journalist? A journalist, after all, is just, I mean, journalism, after all, is just a profession. You are you are practicing journalism. But nationalism is faith, it is belief, it is something which you imbibe, which you soak in, which you and faith in many ways is irrational. Those of us who believe in God, if we are asked to provide evidence that God exists, we will not be able to do it. And yet we believe in God. And that belief is unshakable, whether you are a Hindu, Muslim, Christian, Sikh, whatever, Jew. Similarly, your faith in nationalism, your commitment to the nation, your sense of national pride, national identity is also in many ways irrational. Because you can never answer the question, what has the nation given you that you should be so beholden to the nation? Why should me? I mean, I was born to refugee parents. I mean, if partition or even if partition had happened and there had been no violence in the East, I would have been a Bangladeshi today. So why do I, someone who's a citizen by birth, so strongly committed to the country, to the land? So these questions cannot be answered logically, they cannot be answered. Malkani ji was a Sindhi. He grew up in Sindh. I mean, uh, he had very little topographical knowledge or sense of India. Even in his adult life, he had he had to look at the map. He would often ask, "ये जगह कहाँ पर है?" But despite that, why is it that he was so committed? That for him, uh, nothing came before the nation. And it is this part of you which becomes, as I explained, becomes the base for an ethical life. And that ethical life will help you if you happen to be a journalist, because then you will be practicing ethical journalism. And there should be no conflict between the two, because if you are a nationalist, that does not mean that you lose sense of right and wrong, or that you become blind to realities. No. In fact, your nationalism accentuates your senses, and you actually come from a certain height which others don't. And that is what made someone like K.R. Malkani such a legend, such a big man, and someone whom I personally, I am in awe of him. I was in awe of him, and I remain in awe. And I think I should stop here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kanchanda. Uh, Perhaps you made the right pitch. It is perhaps uh, the different understanding of civilizational state that made it possible that for him nationalism never came as a hurdle in his journalistic endeavor. before I move on to a person who has worked with him and who has seen how he managed these both uh, traits together, Shri K.N. Gupta. I would like to ask you, Dada, then why is it so? Is it something wrong with today's journalism that nationalism is seen something as bad? You have to question the government, you have to be anti-government, and in a way you have to be sort of questioning your idea of nationhood also. Is that become a fashion, or is it just a blind imitation of the western idea of nation state that is creating confusion?
No, I think I would blame our education system. Our textbooks make passing reference to nationalism, etc., but no effort is made to explain to children how their nation is different from other nations. I would blame parents. I think parents have failed abysmally in inculcating a sense of national identity among their children. And I think it's also because, as I said, nobody forcefully questions the assertion that nationalism is bad. I mean, I very passingly referred to Tagore's essay on nationalism, which is used as a totem pole for pushing the anti-nationalism agenda. But these things can be demolished. Most of us, we don't even know what is the difference between a Westphalian state and a civilizational state. Most of us don't know. Why is it that the Middle East shall never be at peace? Because the manner in which the Sykes-Picot states were created. So there has to be a certain effort. And I think, uh, I would think that we have all collectively failed in bringing about a greater, deeper realization. Most people would identify themselves as nationalists. The vast majority would. But if you ask them what makes you a nationalist or what is your sense of nationalism, they will not be able to define or quantify it. Hoisting the tricolor, cheering the army. But no, there is more to nationalism, there is more to national identity and the national ethos than that. Praful, if it is all right with you, can I please be excused?
Yes,
Because
yes,
as
yes.
you know, I
Thank
am
you.
here
Thanks
in
a lot.
Goa for an
Thanks a lot.
event.
I know. Kanchanda is already in Goa, and if he is to be, inaugurated today, and he has his professional responsibility, he has to be there. Thank you, Kanchanda, for those uh, remarks, and I'm sure it will set a new discussion. We are planning to have a year-long events related to Malkaniji, and look forward to
Very
the
good. Thank
and
you.
mostly with the educational institutions who are teaching mass communication and journalism, we are going to have with them. So hope to have your association and cooperation in this.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We will continue the discussion, and we have someone, Kanchanda just talked about the importance of idea of motherland. Very few countries call their very few people call their countries as motherland, and this was one idea that fascinated many people in 1970s, and uh, as it was mentioned it was the activist newspaper, and one person who worked in that newspaper with Malkani ji is Mr. Ken Gupta, who is there with us today. Uh, Namaste, namaste, sir. Uh, as we have been discussing this issue, I would like to put forth two questions for you. One is, how did you see Malkani ji balancing these two things, being a staunch nationalist and still a very objective journalist who stood for journalistic freedom and ideas? And secondly, one question that became very pertinent when Malkani ji was arrested, that it was motherland that pronounced and perhaps predicted about the emergency. What was the situation then? How motherland continued to play a very important role politically and otherwise in shaping the national discourse during that time? We would like to listen from you, your first-hand experiences. You'll have to unmute, sir.
Thank you, Prafullaji. I have lived and worked with Malkani ji. See, he was very senior to us in age and profession. We came into profession much later, but still, we started with him in Organizer, and later on, we shifted to other papers. I worked in Indian Express, Times of India. Then he asked me to join Motherland. Since the beginning of Motherland to the end, I was with him. Well, he was a person who could never be cowed down by anything, even by party, even by stalwarts in the party. He was a person who has own open mind on many, many subjects. And he was a RSS person first and then a professional. That is also there. So therefore, what I say, that Malkani ji worked from the beginning to the end, irrespective of what others say. You see, in fact, Motherland has become the voice of the opposition at that time. And that is why opposition people were not finding a space in any other national newspaper. So most of the news from opposition and their views were being bossed by Malkani ji's in Motherland. Malkani was a very simple person. And we found him that he was too simple, unlike many other editors. You see, you have rightly said, he was the longest serving editor. I had the opportunity to work well with many editors, from Frank Morris to Mankekar to Rangnekar to Girilalji to Shamlalji. So many people I have worked with. But I found that there was nobody as bold and as honest as Malkani ji was. This is what I have found after working with so many people. They were great. Frank Morris was great. He never bothered about Nehru. But at the same time, he has his own things. There was a time when he, during an election in Bombay, Frank Morris did not publish any news about Krishna Menon. In fact, backed down. So Malkani was not that type of person. He was open to all. And therefore, he was very great. He was a visionary. But what you have said is, sir, I feel, because the perspective you have put before us is national perspective. In that, I will say, in that national perspective, you see, what is important is that, then again, I have to say that Bharat Prakashan, which is now publishing both your Panchajanya and Organizer, came into existence soon after independence. And you will be happy to know or surprised to know that besides organizer, Bharat Prakashan started a Hindi daily called Bharatvarsh. Again, Bharatvarsh or Motherland, they almost similar. So they started Bharatvarsh, but unfortunately it was closed down. And later on, after Gandhiji's murder, even organizer was banned, sealed. But the press, which Bharat Prakashan has bought, this press belonged to Dawn newspaper owned by M.A. Jinnah, Muhammad Ali Jinnah. So this Dawn was the greatest paper in Delhi at that time. Hindustan Times was nowhere. Dawn was very popular. And Potan Joseph was its editor at that time. You can imagine. So this was very important. And in the wisdom of, well, you may say RSS or Bharat Prakashan, but I will say RSS, this big press, Latifi Press, which was publishing it from Daryaganj at that time, was bought by Bharat Prakashan. And I'm sorry to say that such a vision which was there is lacking, has lacked since then. Now today, you know the condition of media. Well, you may say that media is this because the media, similarly about Hindustan Samachar. I have worked with Apteji, I worked with Shri Baleshwarji Agrawal and with Malkaniji. Both these editors were professional and worked very, very hard. But unfortunately, the organization they served, or their sponsors, they have betrayed them. They say the conditions are not as good as ought to be by now. From 1947-48 to today, in 2021, what we find is that we have not grown. Our media has not grown. Why? There must be some reason, and it should be looked into. Regarding your question about emergency, yes, Malkaniji was very active. Whatever news came to him, and he verified it, then he published it. That was the important reason why government was shaken. Every minister, every secretary of the government of that time used to watch first motherland. Why? They will see that something has happened about them or about their ministry or what. So they were always shaken. Tomorrow what will happen? There were similarly many stories about Maruti. This was started by motherland also. And similarly about now Sonia Gandhi, as Dr. Swami raised the question in Rajya Sabha that she was a LIC agent and working for a government agency. So such like things and disclosures was made in motherland. Many, which can be only read. But unfortunately, then again I will say, Malkani, who suffered most, he was the first person to be arrested. He telephoned my friend D.N. Singh, whom I have taken from Indian Express to motherland on the advice of Malkaniji. So senior staff he has taken with him. And he phoned up D.N. Singh, who was just living opposite my house, and he said, I am being arrested. He rang up from his bathroom and said that I am being arrested. Therefore, please take charge. And he gave him the charge. He rang me up, and in the early morning at 10 o'clock or so, we reached the office, and you have said very rightly, we created a supplement. We made a supplement, which supplement was contrary to press censorship that was imposed under emergency. So we all people, not only editorial, but even press people, they worked very hard and made that supplement. And our general manager or manager at that time was very kind, and he circulated it. We talked to him, we were very close, so we talked to him, and he circulated this to railway station so that the supplement copies are in a position to reach all corners of the country. And all news pertaining to the arrest of JP or opposition leaders, we tried to contact. Some of them we could contact, some we could not contact, like Pilu Modi's wife, we could contact. So we contacted and found out how it all happened. And then we published it there. And that is how. But fortunately, the police or whatever you say, the authorities at that time did not know that there is this motherland comes out from Jhandewala. They cut electricity of the Bahadur Shah Zafar Marg, which is called Newspaper Industries Place. So they cut it there, but they forgot that there is motherland from Jhandewala. So we could publish it. Otherwise, we would not have been able to publish it. Secondly, I say, we were short of newsprint because we were short of resources always. We didn't have that much of newsprint. Our manager rang up Times of India, and R.C. Jain of Times of India were good enough, and they supplied us newspaper, newsprint, so that we could publish it. So this came out, and this reached every corner. In the evening, when we were sitting there, soon police came and seized the press. Since then, we could not work. Well, I was there, and many people, Ramnath Goenka ji was good enough to help some of us, some of the employees of Motherland, to be enrolled in his newspapers, whether it was Indian Express or Financial Express. But after some time, I went back to Times of India and worked in Economic Times. So therefore, what I say is that we were looking forward that as soon as the emergency will be over, motherland will come. But that is why I say, and we requested Kedarnath Sahni, Advani ji, everybody, but motherland never came back. So this, I say, it is a betrayal, big betrayal to Malkani ji. Malkani ji came, was released the last, and when he came back, he had to go back to organize that. So he was so humble, so good, he did not bother what happens. And during motherland time also, after a few months, money was exhausted because Indira Gandhi had imposed all sorts of controls and all sorts of fears in the minds of big advertisers, big corporate offices, so that they don't give any any advertisement to motherland. So we were starved of it, and we had hardly money collected from small persons, and that was not enough. So therefore, it was to be closed down, shut down. Lala Hansraj Gupta declared his. Malkani ji with very heavy heart announced to us. Then I was the president of the union. I was also a union person in IFWJ, elsewhere in Indian Express or Times of India, but I was president of that union. And luckily, our patron was Mr. Thegri ji. So he has inspired me, and therefore we will use to talk to him, discuss with him. Then he said, "What do you want?" Then I said, there are many proposals, because motherland is started with a very top-heavy editorial and managerial. You will not believe, Times of India had only one manager, D'Souza, at that time. It was such a big paper in Delhi. And motherland has secretary, assistant secretary, general manager, assistant general manager, and manager. Similarly, Mankekar as chief editor, Malkani as editor, and all sorts of chief of bureau and his staff. So there was heavy management and heavy editorial. So that is why we could not survive. So with the inspiration and the guidance of Thengri, I suggested to our chairman, Hans Raj Gupta ji, that these are the proposals. If you please accept, all employees are ready to continue under any circumstance. So 20 proposals were given to Malkani ji. He signed them blank. He said, okay. And general manager also. And then Lalaji agreed that, okay, if employees are giving this proposal,
Sir, please unmute. Gupta ji, please unmute.
You will have to unmute. Gupta ji, you will have to unmute. Unmute, please.
So this newspaper continued till the last moment and earned the goodwill of the people of the opposition parties, and as a result of which in 1977 something came out. But I still find that motherland should have been revived. And this is, I think, whether it is BJP, whether it is Jan Sangh or RSS, we are lacking the vision which we had earlier. This vision is required, sir, and this vision is very, very essential. Now let me come to perspective you are saying about national. Sir, there are so many journalists. Believe me, in fact, during our times, there was no young man who was not connected with RSS. He may have left it for one or the other reason, but no young man was stayed away from RSS. He once or twice or sometime was connected with us. So therefore, our ideology was there. But in media, what happened is that media became turned leftist. Why? There were, first of all, the Russian Soviet influence was there. Money was there. They were training people there. This was the reason. Number two was that all these organizations they ran in media, after M.N. Roy, some people came out. They were independent, but still they remained leftist. They did not come nearer us, like Girilal ji, like Professor Ram Singh, Ram Singh of Hindustan Times, and Srish Chakravarti, so many people in that time of journalism. They were not they were not leftists of that Soviet era, but they remained left-oriented. Our problem was that this was discussed, and I discussed with our general manager, Bharat Prakashan's Satyanarayan Bansalji, who was managing director, and Malkani ji also. That is why in IFWJ, Malkani was so open that he joined at my request IFWJ, Indian Federation of Working Journalists. Similarly, he joined Press Council, Press Club. So we started this, but then we failed. We brought into existence National Union of Journalists. Now, what is happening? There is also not many people are there. These organizations need to be strengthened. Similarly, sir, in this Editors Guild, now you know there was All India Newspaper Editors Conference. It was an editors body. But when Vishbandhu Gupta became its chairman, almost permanent, it was dominated by Congress or whatever. So therefore, senior journalists like Malkani ji and Girilal ji and others, Akshay Kumar ji, all these people, all editors, uh, uh, made Editors Guild of India. Now, where is Editors Guild of India? You know the position. Editors Guild in the name of it is being guided by Mustafa. I mean, where are our editors? Where are our other people? So unless we take important or very significant part in all these organizations, now what happened? Press Council. There is no working journalist in the Press Council, no representative of working journalists in the Press Council, and it has happened. So these things have to be looked into, sir. From perspective point, I'm saying that nationalist organization, they must work hard and please you well, and that will be the highest tribute to Malkani ji and Baleshwar ji. So thank you, sir.
Thank you, Guptaji. I absolutely agree. Today I brought this discussion for this very purpose because I know there is a larger discourse even in the media fraternity that nationalism and journalism cannot go hand in hand. When we are seeing upsurge of the nationalist thought in the larger society, why it is not reflected in media fraternity also? And therefore, while remembering Malkani ji, we thought this would be an appropriate topic to discuss, and that is why we invited IIMC also to join this event on behalf of IIMC. Dr. Pramod is there. He has also worked with the organizer for a long time. Pramodji, I request you to make your comments and propose a vote of thanks. I would personally like to thank both Kanchanda and K.N. Gupta ji for making it convenient to attend. There are many people who have joined via Facebook, and both an organizer and Panchajanya. Malkani ji had unique distinction of being editor of Motherland, organizer, Panchajanya. So he was in institution in himself. So over to you, Pramod.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. We have already heard Kanchanda, K.N. Gupta ji, and we have with us some faculty members from the Indian Institute of Mass Communication, Professor Govind Singh ji, who is Dean Academics, and Professor Sangeeta Pranavendra ji. And we also have some students from the Indian Institute of Mass Communication. Definitely, it is very, very enlightening thoughts that Kanchanda has shared, and the memories that K.N. Gupta ji has shared with us. These are definitely very, very important for the students of journalism now. Kanchanda has very thoughtfully discussed journalism and nationalism, complementary or contradictory. I think I have nothing to comment on that. Shri K.N. Gupta ji has first-hand experience. He has worked with Malkani ji, with organizer, with Motherland, and also one, I think, Eveninger was started by Motherland in 1971. He has also worked in that newspaper also. It is my suggestion that Prafulji, as we have planned to celebrate this birth centenary of K.R. Malkani ji throughout the year, we should have detailed discussion with K.N. Gupta ji. We should record his experience, as it will be primary data for the future research that we conduct, that we plan on Malkani ji. What I can summarize from the thoughts of Kanchanda and K.N. Gupta ji is that Malkani ji was symbol of fearless and constructive journalism. He was well read, as has been mentioned by Kanchanda, and that's why it was very difficult even to the scholars in those days to challenge his arguments and thoughts. The present generation of journalists needs to imbibe this spirit from Malkani-ji. And I think we need to discuss these values in detail with the students of journalism. Kanchan Da has reminded us that Malkani-ji, for Malkani-ji, nothing came before the nation. Yes, he followed this ideal throughout his career in journalism. Here, I would like to remember the first tagline, the tagline that was used by first Hindi newspaper, Udat Martanda. It was started in 1826. And the tagline of that newspaper was, Hindustaniyon ke hit ke het, for the good of the Hindustanis, the countrymen. And Malkani-ji worked for Malkani-ji, his readers, the nation were always first, and he never compromised on these values, although he had to pay a heavy price for it. He was first journalist to be jailed during emergency, as has been mentioned by Prafulji. Unfortunately, this spirit is found missing from a big section of today's media. It is a major challenge before us how to restore those values. The birth centenary of Malkani-ji and also this Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav that we are celebrating this year, I think it is an opportunity for us to remember those values and instill into the young generation of journalism. As a journalist, as has been mentioned by K.N. Gupta-ji, I also had the opportunity to meet Malkani-ji repeated times. I met him in organizer office in 1995 when he visited organizer office at 29 Rani Jhansi Road at the chamber of the then editor Shri Sheshadri Chari-ji, and he also visited organizer office many times when we had the office at Keshav Kunj. I think he was looking after the management of Bharat Prakashan Delhi Limited in those days. He was also governor of Puducherry, we all know that, and I met him when he was governor. I think the Indian Institute of Mass Communication is definitely feels proud to be part of this birth centenary celebration of K.R. Malkani-ji. And the IMC, DG IMC, Professor Sanjay Dwivedi-ji has told me to convey here that we would like to organize some activities as part of the birth centenary of Malkani-ji in organizer campus. We would like the present generation of journalists, particularly the media students who are going to be journalists next year, to learn from the life and works of Malkani-ji. The IMC can also be part of any research project if started by the birth centenary celebration committee, and we can work on the life and works of Malkani-ji. On behalf of the IMC, the co-host of this discussion, I express my sincere thanks to today's speakers, Shri Kanchan Gupta-ji, Shri K.N. Gupta-ji, and everyone who has joined this discussion. I think we would soon meet in IMC in any further discussion that we can organize. Thank you, everyone. We have some eminent journalists. We have Dr. Ravindra Agrawal also here. Some very eminent personalities have joined this discussion. I express thanks to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to everyone. And we hope and look forward for your participation and cooperation in the memory of Shri K.R. Malkani and his journalistic legacy throughout the year. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Namaskar.